are literally in uniform, so to speak, as you would expect of an army. The Muslim girls, the Muslim men are all supposed to wear that uniform. And when they get into a majority status, they start wearing their uniform to mark themselves out, to claim the territory, to dominate the unbeliever, to strike fear into the infidel, when they're the majority, not before. All are literally in uniform, so to speak, as you would expect of an army, but many only contribute indirectly to the overall job of spreading the faith, spreading domination, spreading fear of Islam. Just as with the bicycle, only some of the parts contribute directly to its movement by moving themselves. Yes, the faith must be spread, in the end by the sword if necessary, but only if necessary. In that sense, Islam could well be seen as a religion of peace, posturing peace. And if the approach of peaceful persuasion does not succeed, there are many other ways short of actual violence, but involving force, or the threat of force nonetheless, which could persuade. For example, the show of force to induce the non-Muslim world to convert willingly or to be cowed into submission may suffice. War and violence, terrorism and intimidation are only some of the means of carrying on the mission. In peaceful Islamic theory, war should be the servant of the mission, not its master. And that's the difference between the radical and the mainstream. So yes, militant mainstream Islam does have a peaceful side to it, but then so too does a battleship. The USS Missouri did not have to always fire its guns in anger to have the needed effect. It could attain its objective at times merely by the threat of force or by its very appearance and presence in a harbour. The use of force may not always be needed or justifiable. Voluntary conversions to Islam do take place when it is portrayed in the rose-coloured spectacles of the Western liberals. So why war when you can succeed without it, as they are doing? But alas, those who perhaps willingly and winsomely decide that they will take the easy option and go into Islam soon find out that it's a trap. Once you go into Islam, you cannot leave. Under the Islamic Sharia, that is apostasy, which carries the death penalty. Certainly many Muslims are peaceful and would never do the kind of things that their religious compatriots would do. But does this matter? Not every part on the assembled bicycle was a moving part, but the bicycle is nonetheless designed to move. And not every sailor on the USS Missouri was a gunner or an aimer or a target locator or an identifier, but yet, even if they were just cooks or laundrymen, all too obviously peaceful roles, each contributed an essential part in the fighting nature of the whole. What matters in that sense is not the individual, but the whole of which he is a part, and of which your government has invited into your very bosom. Let me point out the policy of the Muslim Council of Europe. It is mainstream Islamic policy in Europe, under the orders of the Muslim Council of Europe, that no Muslim can lead a good Muslim life outside of his community. That all Muslims can only express a good and religious life in community, in disciplined community, with other Muslims around a mosque. And that Muslims must congregate as Muslims in specified areas or encampments, short of the camel and the fig tree, from which they can dominate a locality and from which they can then spread out. The army has a strategy, and it looks like an army. A religious army, but an army nonetheless. One can hardly blame it, in one sense, for following through and working out in practice the teachings of its own holy book, together with the written down traditions of their own holy prophet. Islam is, in fact, in our country, with its honour killings and its paedophile rape of our children, it is behaving in character and according to its demonic nature and purpose, as it believes it is under their God, the only true and noble religion, of which departures are apostate, whether Jew or Christian, and are to be wiped out, silenced, and put down. There will never be peace between the Muslims and Israel for that reason alone. The truth must dominate according to the ideas of their prophet. The truth must dominate and prevail, and it must do so in this life. What is surprising about the whole situation is not the suicide bombings of Muslim fanatics, the honour killings of their women, the violence and intimidation of their monsters over our own children, the paedophile weddings, the rapes and enslavings of those taken in war. For all these are a part of the nature, the teachings, the principles, and the history of this monstrous faith. What is surprising is that such demonic traitors as Blair and such ignorant pigs as Cameron could imagine that you can have peace with such a demonic faith as this. Perhaps, just perhaps, it could have been so if the Muslims were allowed to disperse amongst the general population and were not subject to the demonic teachings of that vile and disgusting book and its evil prophet. And I can only end with a quote from the Reverend John Wesley, who told us 200 years ago about the nature of Islam. And for those of you in the Church of England, John Wesley was not a member of the BNP. He was a member of the Church of England. This is what John Wesley said. His brother, Charles Wesley, had a hymn. It talked about driving the fiend, that is Mahomet, back to hell. And that hymn is going to be on our website in the Christian Council of Britain shortly. But anyway, let's see what John Wesley said about this religion. Ever since the religion of Islam appeared in the world, this is John Wesley, the founder of Methodism. Ever since the religion of Islam appeared in the world, the espousers of it have been as wolves and tigers to all other nations, rending and tearing all that fell into their merciless paws and grinding them with their iron teeth. That numberless cities are razed from the foundation, and only their name remaining, that many countries which were once as the garden of God are now a desolate wilderness, and that so many once numerous and powerful nations are vanished from the earth. Such was, and is at this day, the rage, the fury, the revenge of these destroyers of mankind. How far and wide has this miserable delusion spread over the face of the earth, insomuch that Muslims are considerably more in number, as 6 to 5, than Christians, and by all accounts these are also in general as utter strangers to all true religion as their four-footed brethren, as void of compassion as bulls and goats, so that they are in truth a disgrace to human nature.
Yeah.